Hi, I'm Colleen Delaney, romance author and booktuber, and today we're going to talk about NaNoWRIMO. If you are new to my channel, in the description, as always, I put links to my newsletter and books I have written. If you want to check out any of these, if I pique your interest at all during this video, please do so. Now, usually I do a how I nano this time of year. The last 2 years I released videos that are different about how I outline, how I prep my space for NaNoWRIMO, all that stuff. And I think you don't need another one. So I decided this year to do something a little bit different and to instead tell you about my successful nano projects and where they are now. Before we start, today is a messy hair don't care day. It is also the most beautiful fall day. It's like super overcast and my front tree is glowing orangey gold to the point that I think I'm gonna right now try to move my tripod so I can show you. Let's see if it works. Can you see how beautiful that looks? Can you see this? Because our window's broken and I have to keep that there or else a chill gets in. Fun times being a homeowner. We're back. So I have successfully completed nano 4 times. I have attempted it more times than that. I was trying to remember exactly how many times I attempted it. And I wanna say 8 ? Maybe only 7. I know I didn't complete it in 2020 because I attempted it and started it, and that was just not a time in my life in which I could write a novel in a month. I'm sure a lot of people felt like that. Or maybe if you were someone who always worked in an office and lived alone, it was like the perfect novel writing time. But for me, that was right when I started homeschooling 3 out of my 4 kids, and they were always here. So that made it more difficult. In the other videos that I've linked in the description, I talk about how I make sure I finish, and I would recommend checking those out if you have a hard time actually finishing NaNoWRIMO. This year, I am planning in the month of November to try to put up at least 1 writing vlog and maybe a writing sprint or 2. I am not sure how well those will do because I'm mostly a book channel, but keep an eye out if you are attempting NaNoWRIMO for the first time or the 30th time and you want to write along with me, just keep an eye on my channel in November. Now let's start talking about the first time I ever finished NaNoWRIMO. It was in 2018, which is kind of crazy because in 2018, I had twins who had just turned 1, a child about to turn 3, and a child who was 6, I think. That sounds like correct age spreads for them. So my life was really busy, but the good thing about that is everyone who wasn't in full day school, which was everyone except the oldest, took a nap at that point. So I pretty much NaNoWRIMO'd during nap time. The book I completed during NaNoWRIMO was Waiting for You, which I released under Lucy Hudson. And then I also wrote the beginning of Only You, which is also a Lucy Hudson book. Now, with any NaNoWRIMO project, it's not going to be the most polished first draft you've ever written. They're usually a little bit slapped together. I will say Waiting for You kept pretty much its complete plot arc and a lot of the details, not all of them. Only You, I did end up rewriting a lot of the words that I put out during Nano, but I still got the project started, which was very important to me. The second year I completed NaNoWRIMO, which I believe was November 2019. My brain is just not really remembering things. Yeah, that sounds correct. Was book 2 in my Witchy series, which will start coming out in spring. And the exciting thing about this book, Waiting for You and Only You, I did self-publish. This book has a publishing contract with a publishing company. So I did write a book during NaNoWRIMO that has a publishing contract. How exciting. So this book is a little longer than any of the other books I've written during Nano. So I did complete, I want to say about 58,000 words on this book during NaNoWRIMO, and then I did get burnt out. Now, this did go through several drafts already. I'm probably on draft like 5 or 6 of it, I would guess. And it is now like 78,000 words. So I am a person who is an underwriter versus an overwriter. So if you ever hear novelists complaining about how it's like they have to cut so much stuff in their second draft that they write these like 100,000 words romance novels and then they end up having to cut that much. That's not the kind of writer I am. I tend to first draft like kind of bare bones, plot structure, character development, but I don't write a lot of setting type stuff or background stuff until I am doing my second draft. I mean, legit, there are times in my second draft, I'm like, wow, I didn't actually give this character enough of a growth arc. And that happens a lot to me. I'm a big underwriter. So for me, writing 50,000 words in a month is kind of like my bare bones of a first draft. My third year completing NaNoWRIMO, which was November 2021, I wrote a draft of a witchy book that you probably won't see until like 2026. I will explain. It's because it's a spin-off of the witchy series that is starting in spring that I do have a contract for the first 2 books, but this is a book that's going to come out after that entire series is completed because it takes place after the events of that series. Now, the main reason I chose to write that book in November 2021, when I hadn't finished writing that series, though I have it all plotted out, was because I was very nervous, having failed at 2020 Nano due to extenuating circumstances, that it would be hard for me to complete a Nano. So that book takes place in October and November in Maine, and I did have a feeling that writing a very autumnal book would make it easier. Like looking out the window, and I don't live in Maine, but I've been to Maine in October, but looking out the window at like the wind and the rain and the leaves and thinking that would probably help keep me focused on the story. Now, I ended up only writing about 45,000 words for that book because it is going to probably be finished around 65 rather than 75. And I told you before about me being an underwriter. So what I ended up doing is then writing a chunk of one of my werewolf books, and the one of my books that I wrote a chunk for was Waiting for His Mate. And so you all have heard me talk about it. It came out in September. I wrote, I think, about the first 12,000 words because I definitely went over the 50,000 on that November. I wrote about the first 12,000 words. And in terms of what I kept, I didn't change the plot of that at all. I had already hardcore outlined it before NaNoWRIMO, which does make it easier. I did edit it several times. I mean, anything you write is going to be edited several times, but the general gist did stay the same. And finally, last year, I completed Nano, November 2022, and I did it very weirdly. So if you've seen 2 previous months, I wrote an entire book and then started another book. This was a weird November. So last fall, I had gotten quite a bit of The Wolves of Leuven book 3 done. That's coming out in January. But I had about 60% left to write. And while you are technically supposed to start a new project with every Nano, I kind of don't subscribe to that. So what I did was I finished that book. I wrote like 60% of it. And then I started book 4 and ended up writing maybe like the first 30-ish%, probably less of that book to get me to the 50K. Now, I will say book 3, I kept a lot of stuff the same. Book 4, I hadn't done my like hardcore outline. I had like vibes. I had character ideas. I had that sort of thing going on. So that beginning did go through a huge change. I changed pretty much the entire characterization of the hero. I completely changed the kind of personality I wanted him to have. I changed a lot of the dynamic between the two of them. So I will say that while I do sort of count that as being a Nano book, it was really just getting words on paper that I ended up not using that much of. This year, I am going to write the 5th book in the Wolves of Leuven series. I'm going to start at the beginning, right to completion. If you are one of my readers of the Wolves of Leuven, you know they are, I call them long novellas. I don't really know how to characterize them because they're technically not novels, because I think you need to have 50,000 words to be a novel, and they're not. They sit between, depending on which book it is, because they do get longer as the series goes on. I think the shortest is like 37,000 words, and the longest so far is more like 47. So I'm going to write my first draft, but remember, I am an underwriter, of the 5th book, which is hardcore outlined and ready to go. But then I am going to add on about 10,000 words of part of a witchy book that I can't tell you about. But so that's how I'm hoping to piece together. And I'm hoping that gets me to 50K. If it doesn't, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I would maybe, because the 10,000 words I have to write for a witchy book is like a particular set of scenes. It's not like I'm starting it and I could just keep writing. That book is done. I just have a thing I decided to take out and I need to put stuff in. I need to change some stuff out. So it's not like I just could continue writing that witchy story. So I'm probably going to have in the back of my mind that maybe I'll write the first couple chapters of the 6th Wolfie book I have going on. I don't know. Now, I have a sort of question for those of you who are my regular watchers, or if you are new here and you think, wow, this woman's voice is interesting, please stick around and feel free to comment what I'm about to say. This channel is mainly about books. I do talk about my writing, I do pitch my books to you, but I'm not really a writing YouTube channel, mostly because I find it way easier to discuss books. I am a librarian. I've been working in books in some way since I was 19 years old, basically. I think that's when I got my first job in an indie bookstore. So I find that easier than explaining craft to me. I am by no means an expert writer. I am like a baby romance author. That being said, I am looking into creating more writing-based content, whether that be about my writing or about fostering more of a writing community. I've just sort of begun playing with this idea and of looking at different avenues to go down. One of the avenues is just to create more writing content on this channel, but I do find, since this is such a booktube forward channel, that it might not be a great idea to suddenly be posting writing videos, and that might annoy my current subscribers who are really just here for book reviews, etc. recommendations, that kind of stuff. My next avenue is to create a second YouTube channel, but at the same time, I don't know if I can create enough content for 2 channels, particularly as we hurtle towards the bad virus season. And if you are a follower, you know that often there is a coughing child in the background. Not today, knock on wood, that we stay healthy through Halloween, please. My last option, which I have been thinking about, would be to create a very inexpensive Patreon, as I'm not really looking at this to be like a source of income, at least not at this point in time. And that would be a place where you could get extra videos. And when I say things like a witchy series I can't tell you about, I would tell you about it. And that maybe I would give some sneak peeks to books coming out, some snippets, some short stories, some bonus epilogues, stuff like that. At some point, I would probably be cool, like running a book club on Patreon. These are all just ideas I'm throwing out there, and obviously things that I have just recently started thinking about. But if you are still here and any of those sound interesting, please let me know. If you are here just for books and you don't want any writing content, you're not gonna hurt my feelings to write that in the comments. I'd rather you tell me that than me try to do all this writing stuff and then it comes to nothing. If you are here and are thinking, wow, I would actually like some writing content, but I don't want to pay for it on Patreon, please say that. And if you are someone who likes both writing and book content, please let me know that as well. If you are here, you really don't like typing in the comments, which I understand, but you want to let your voice be heard, a big stack of book emojis is great if you're just here for books. A pen emoji is great if you are interested in more writing content. And if you want both, just give me a books and a pen. Thank you for hanging out during this NaNoWRIMO video. If you are planning on doing NaNoWRIMO, please also let me know, because I am quite curious how many of my viewers participate. It's very fun. If you want more NaNoWRIMO content from me and would like to interact, because comments on YouTube are a little bit difficult to interact in. I do check them quite often, like more than once a day. But if you want to be more part of like a writing community and you are on Twitter, I tend to post a lot of NaNoWRIMO stuff on there. My link to my Twitter account is in the description. I am also on Instagram and TikTok. I check those daily. I'm not as active on those. Twitter falling apart is really a thorn in my side because I am most active in the writing community there. So please, if you want to talk about writing stuff or just follow along in NaNoWRIMO, sometimes I say funny stuff, sometimes I say funny stuff. Please follow me on any of those platforms or just here. And as always, I hope you're in the middle of a good book, about to start reading a good book, or about to start writing a great book. I'll see you soon.